The Nothing Phone 1 was certainly made to start a conversation, but is that enough? You're here watching this review, so you'll likely fall into one of two camps. You've either never heard of Nothing before and are wondering what the hell this thing is, or you've been glued to the story of the London-based startup, eagerly anticipating their debut smartphone. Either way, we hope to help you understand what the hype is all about. The Phone 1 is here to make a statement, and it's clearly been made using more than just a checklist of Me Too features, with a rear design unlike anything else you'll see on the market, functionality that offers intrigue and whimsy, and an otherwise well-rounded and capable pairing of software and hardware. It's certainly an eye-catching addition to the smartphone industry. Nothing unveiled the Phone 1 on July 12, 2022. And the handset formally went on sale on July 1st, 2022, but only across the UK, Europe, India, Japan, Hong Kong, and Australia, notably missing out on the US. Ahead of launch, the company had already confirmed a US release date would follow, but couldn't specify exactly when. As for pricing, the Nothing Phone 1 is available in 3 variants. The base model offers 8GB of RAM and 12GB of storage at £399. But you can get better specs if you're willing to splash the cash, maxing out at 12GB of RAM and 256GB of storage for £499. If you want to see conversions of those prices for your location, head to techradar.com and check out our full written review. The overall design of the Nothing 1 bears an immediate resemblance to Apple's iPhone 12, namely due to the phone's straight-edged metal frame, rounded corners, flat front and back, and dual rear camera placement. The big hook of the Phone 1's design is the back. It's completely transparent. And while it's not the first transparent phone to hit the market, it is one of the more appealing ones, as Nothing has designed the exposed parts underneath to both be functional and aesthetically pleasing. As you turn your phone in your hand, the shifting specular highlights and shadows that appear over and under the layers of differently textured components, screws, and ribbon cables make it far more interesting to look at than most other phones on the market. And even with a completely clear Gorilla Glass 5 back, the Phone 1 does a surprisingly decent job of repelling fingerprints. Smudges buff out easily enough too when you do spot any. At launch, Nothing serves up the Phone 1 with 2 finishes, a black model and a white one, the former offering a more understated appearance, while the latter accentuates that standout design element. It's sure to get people talking when you walk into a bar and casually plonk it down on the table. Despite its straight sides, the edges of the recycled aluminium frame are subtly rounded to ensure that the Phone 1 is more comfortable in the hand than you'd expect. And what's more, it feels lighter than its build and size might suggest. The phone sits at just below 200 grams, and in our experience, anything beyond this is when the weight starts to feel noticeable. The power key on the right-hand side of the frame and the 2 volume controls on the left are large and easy to reach and respond with a satisfying click. The IP53 certification means that the Phone 1 can be used in a light drizzle without much issue, and should prevent dust from working its way into the cavity behind the clear black glass. Just don't drop it in the sink or throw it around at the beach. Throughout testing, the glass and the metalwork haven't shown any obvious signs of wear, save for a pre-fitted plastic screen protector and charging cable, both of which for us came scuffed out of the box. Now this could be down to Nothing's limited startup operational capacity, with the company's small size increasing the chance of quality control slip-ups, especially when compared to a well-oiled behemoth like Samsung or Xiaomi. Or it could just be a bit of a faux pas limited to the press sample that we received. Nothing has dubbed its signature feature the Glyph interface, a series of 900 white LEDs arranged across the back of the phone in a distinct configuration that act as something like a notification light on steroids. The LEDs are diffused to form bars of light that run around the edge of the elements, like the rear camera module and the wireless charging coil. Each segmented glyph can light up independently of the others. It's definitely a unique feature, and Nothing has put it to use in a few creative ways. Dipping into the Glyph interface in the settings menu, you can customize what glyphs react to and when they react. By default, they're paired to the Nothing 10's own brand ringtones and notification tones, with various light and haptic patterns perfectly synchronized to the audio of each. The glyph's usefulness goes beyond just glanceable notifications though. They can also act as a battery charging indicator, both for wired and reverse charging. They can also show when Google Assistant is listening, and serve as a soft light when you're shooting video or portrait mode shots. The blend of novelty and functionality that the Glyph interface delivers undoubtedly caters to that sense of joy that nothing is so keenly pushed as one of its primary intentions behind the Phone 1. We just wish there was a little more customization and personalization on offer. There's unquestionably room to expand the functionality to app-specific notifications, in-game actions, and the option to compose your own glyph patterns in conjunction with your own tones and tunes. That would be a nice touch. Thankfully, having spoken with the team at Nothing during the phone's launch, it's clear that aspects of the Phone 1, including that Glyph interface, will continue to evolve, and we can't wait to see all the neat use cases that users find that we wouldn't have ever even considered. Let me know down in the comments below, what would you like to be able to use the Glyph interface for? Nothing has graced the Phone 1 with a 6.55-inch Full HD Plus OLED panel, boasting HDR10 Plus capability and 10-bit color support. The screen is surrounded by a not insignificant bezel, but it claws back some of those aesthetic points, being the same thickness all the way around, made possible by Nothing's use of a flexible OLED in place of a less expensive rigid panel. The phone's punch hole in the front-facing camera sits at the top left corner of the screen, while an optical in-display fingerprint sensor sits low and close to the bottom edge of the panel. Despite the technical advantages of an OLED display, there is no always-on functionality as yet. However, a faint ring showing the fingerprint sensor placement does linger on the screen while the rest of the display shuts off. As for the panel's output, the Full HD Plus resolution offers a perfectly sharp image, suited to enjoying social media and streaming video. It seems wholly serviceable in scenarios up to bright direct sunlight, where visibility starts to suffer. A 120Hz refresh rate paired with a 240Hz touch response rate means that swiping around the Phone 1's interface looks and feels pleasingly snappy. Gaming is also a joy thanks to that high touch response rate. To help with power efficiency, that refresh rate is also dynamic, meaning it can automatically switch up and down in frames per second based on what the phone is doing. The lower the hertz, the less fluid the motion appears on screen, but the less of a drain on battery the display becomes. Given that Nothing's first product was a pair of Bluetooth earbuds, it should come as no surprise that the Phone 1 doesn't feature a wired headphone jack anywhere, instead delivering audio over Bluetooth 5.2. The phone also sports dual stereo speakers, but you should understand that it's not an even split, with the majority of power driven from the downfiring speakers, while the earpiece outputs the mids and highs. Clarity is good across the speaker range with no real distortion, even when setting the volume to 100%. So clarity is pretty respectable, making more nuanced vocals enjoyable, and whilst the bass output isn't particularly prominent, the phone does impress with the degree of stereo separation it offers up. Nothing's OS falls into a similar camp of that of Motorola's and Google's own takes on Android, with mild adjustments that set it apart from a truly stock experience. Folders can be enlarged to occupy a 2x2 space on the home screen, offering hybrid functionality. Specific quick setting widgets can be swiped through, providing more connectivity options at a glance. And whilst it's tucked away, there's even a pop-up view for more convenient multitasking. Some inclusions, like the smartphone home control shortcut on the lock screen, feel particularly powerful, although there are signs of work still needing to be done with regards to stability. Not to mention there are some noticeable absent features like the lack of a one-handed mode. Nothing does deserve kudos for promising 3 years of OS updates and 4 years of security updates to the Phone 1, making the device that much more appealing both in terms of value for money and longevity. One of the most controversial aspects of the Phone 1 ahead of its launch was the reveal of Nothing's choice of chipset, a tuned version of an older 7th generation Qualcomm chip, the Snapdragon 778G Plus. Despite running on more modest silicone than conventional flagship phones, the real-world use shows us that Nothing's gamble has paid off, at least in part. The 778G Plus won't win awards based on its benchmark scores, but for most users it should be more than enough for everything from split-screen multitasking to semi-casual gaming. It's happy handling a few rounds of Call of Duty Mobile with very high graphics and max frame rate. There was no real issues or noticeable heat buildup when we played. The real challenge will be how capable the Phone 1 feels after long-term usage, and whether Nothing is able to maintain the current quality of performance after a year's worth of bug fixes, security patches, and feature updates. Where the 778G does fall down is with battery longevity, and while there's an argument to be had for the phone's ability to learn and optimize power management based on usage patterns, baseline battery was pretty underwhelming. The Nothing phone packs a 4,500 mAh battery, which Nothing claims delivers up to 18 hours of usage per charge. In practice, however, the Phone 1 consistently doled out around 5 hours of on-screen time, which should be considered the bare minimum for what to expect from a purchase-worthy smartphone. As such, don't expect to indulge on the Phone 1 and get away with it. You will likely have to put the phone on charge before bed if you're planning on binging Netflix on a long train ride. Anything less demanding and a full day's use is within reach, but maybe only just. As for recharging, the Phone 1's battery officially refills 50% in 30 minutes, provided that you've picked up a compatible PD 3.0/Quick Charge 4.0 compliant adapter that meets the phone's maximum fast charging speed of 33 watts. Nothing does offer its own 45 watt adapter at an additional cost. Included in the box, all you'll get is a white USB-C to USB-C cable. We used a third-party 27 watt PD adapter and actually managed to reach over 65% charge after 30 minutes plugged in, with a full charge completing in just over an hour, so actually better than we were promised. While the front-facing snapper clocks in at an unassuming 16 megapixels, both rear cameras pack in the pixels with 50 megapixels each. Shooting on the Phone 1 is fun. The shutter is reasonably fast in daylight or artificial lighting, and images from the main 50 megapixel Sony sensors serve up a pleasing amount of detail, plus colors that dabble tastefully with heightened saturation. When snapping stuff closer to the primary sensor, there's an attractive level of bokeh that puts out better close-up shots than the phone's dedicated macro shooting mode, which relies on the ultra-wide rather than the main sensor. Speaking of that ultra-wide, it's unsurprisingly a slight visual downgrade against the main camera with weaker, more muted colors, muddier details, and narrower dynamic range. That said, it still serves its purpose with a nice 114-degree field of view that gives you more opportunities to be creative. In low light, the disparity between the sensors is more prominent with regards to grain, detail, and dynamic range. However, the warmer color temperature that night mode shots on the ultra-wide sensor sometimes feature have a favorable charm, so long as you don't need to crop in too much. For those curious, using the Glyph interface as a fill light instead of the phone's dedicated single LED flash provides a softer, cooler light source to work with, but it has a noticeably shorter throw, so is best used for subjects that are nearer the camera. The highlight of snapping selfies has to be the capable edge detection when using portrait mode, adding a nice level of polish to photos that imply they were taken on a much more capable camera than in actuality. As for video recording, the Phone 1 captures up to 1080p at 60 frames per second, or 4K at 30 frames per second, but that's only through the rear sensors, and has OIS and EIS that does a capable job. The vibration made when shooting and walking is still evident in the final footage, but it's not as bad as some other smartphones. It'd be nice to be able to move between the ultra-wide and main sensor while recording, but you can't have everything you want in a package this cheap. And the front-facing camera shoots 1080p at 30 frames per second or 720p at 30 frames per second, and here is an example of what that looks and sounds like right now. At first blush, the appeal of the Nothing Phone 1 rests on its standout design and the strength of its story. The company has clearly learned lessons from its first product, and the level of polish applied to the Phone 1 surpasses expectation. While unique features like its transparent back and Glyph lighting marry novelty and functionality in a way that's absent from most modern smartphones. We give the Nothing Phone 1 4 out of 5 stars. Thanks for watching. I want to hear from you down in the comments. Is this Glyph thing a total gimmick, or is it something you're actually pretty interested in? While you're down there, leave a like on the video, subscribe to Techradar here on YouTube, and you won't miss any of our future phones coverage.